I have seen all manner of incredible artefacts and locations, but one of the most impressive was undoubtedly a fascinating Anglo-Saxon box dating from the early 8th century, the enigmatic and beautiful Franks Casket. The Franks Casket is a remarkable object from Anglo-Saxon or early medieval England, carved from whalebone. The small rectangular box is adorned with intricate carvings and inscriptions that blend Christian, Germanic, Roman and Jewish traditions, offering a unique window into the cultural and intellectual life of the time. Named after Sir Augustus Wollaston Franks, who acquired it for the British Museum in the 19th century, the casket highlights the artistic and narrative complexity of the Anglo-Saxon period. Each side of the casket and its lid are covered with scenes rich in detail, accompanied by runic inscriptions in Old English and Latin. The beautifully rendered carvings depict a variety of stories, ranging from the biblical adoration of the Magi to the Germanic legend of Wayland the Smith. Wayland, or Volund as he's known to the Norse, seems to have had a particularly elevated role among the pagan Anglo-Saxons, with the Neolithic chambered long barrow Wayland's Smithy in Oxfordshire being so named due to Saxon legend that it was the smithing god's forge. Wayland, held captive by a king, forges his escape by crafting wings and taking brutal vengeance on his captor. On the right of the same panel, a more serene image unfolds, the adoration of the Magi. 3 wise men approach the Virgin Mary bearing gifts for the Christ child, a moment rendered in remarkable detail. These 2 stories, one pagan and one Christian, are united by runic inscriptions that weave a narrative connection between the sacred and the legendary. The Anglo-Saxons' pagan past and their Christian present preserved for posterity in this stunning item. The reverse panel moves into the realm of history and mythology. It depicts the sack of Jerusalem by Titus, a Jewish story often interpreted as a symbol of divine justice. The lid is perhaps the most enigmatic part of the artefact. Its carvings blend Christian and pagan imagery, possibly drawing from the Sigurd saga or another Germanic legend. Some interpretations suggest it represents a cosmological or eschatological vision, capturing the early medieval interplay between myth and theology. Other panels on the casket feature Romulus and Remus, the legendary founders of Rome, alongside scenes whose meanings continue to be debated by experts. The fascinating fusion of mythologies and religious imagery highlights the enlightened and learned nature of Anglo-Saxon England. This, contrasting the idea that it was some kind of backward Dark Age, with England awaiting the civilizing continental influences of the Norman conquerors. It seems to be that the more Anglo-Saxon jewellery and illuminated manuscripts you look at, the more you wonder what might have been. Returning to the Franks Casket, its purpose remains a mystery. It may have served as a reliquary, a container for valuable objects, or just as a commemorative piece. Measuring around 9 inches or 23 centimetres wide, nearly 7.5 inches, 19 centimetres deep, and just over 4 inches, 11 centimetres high, it is a small but powerful object that commands attention for its craftsmanship and the stories it tells. Displayed in the right context, it is mesmerising. Today, most of the casket resides in the British Museum, while a single missing panel is held at the Museo Nazionale del Bargello in Florence, Italy. The Franks Casket is more than just a decorative box. It is a piece of history that encapsulates the interplay of faith, legend and artistry in Anglo-Saxon England. Each panel of the Franks Casket invites viewers into a world where mythology, history and religion intersect. The casket featured in the recent Silk Roads exhibition at the British Museum, and, for me at least, it was the star attraction. The official catalogue of the exhibition set the historical and cultural stage for the casket. It read, "The myriad stories told by the surviving art, archaeology, literature and other sources from northwest Europe between circa 500 and 1000 belie the age-old paradigm that the region, after the Romans, became a benighted place whose inhabitants knew nothing of and went nowhere in the wider world. Instead, a vivid portrait emerges of an interconnected and outward-looking region, a focal point of constant multidirectional motion, receptive and contributory to the transfer of people, objects and ideas across immense distances." By now, the presence of a South Asian Buddha figure on a small Swedish island should not surprise. The reasons for and details of its epic journey remain uncertain, but the transfer itself is completely credible. Still too often, such out-of-place artefacts are branded as curios or exotica, based on an assumed unawareness of their origin, intended meaning, function, and method of manufacture, given that they had travelled so far to get to Europe. Their perceived oddity in a European context is often thought to have granted them symbolic, amuletic, or prestigious qualities that elevated them above more familiar, locally made artefacts. This compartmentalization is easily challenged when imported objects are viewed in a wider geographical perspective. If the Helgo Buddha embodies tangible exchanges across the Silk Roads, a final object from northwest Europe evokes the parallel and equally valuable transfer of intangible commodities such as knowledge, ideas, and intellectual concepts. The Franks Casket, made in Northumbria around 700 and now named after its donor to the British Museum, is carved with stories from Jewish history, Christian tradition, and Roman and Northern mythology, narrated in Latin and Old English, written respectively in Roman and runic letters. The casket's form is also foreign inflected, most likely drawing from late antique Mediterranean types. It was clearly made at an intellectual centre such as a monastery, and for an elite patron. Beyond this, it is a mystery. Perhaps it was a moral guide for good Christian rulership, or a kind of universal history lesson, but it is important to eschew its riddling, and to view it too in an international perspective. It is clear that the casket's iconographic programme was not random, but an artful syncretism of tales designed to convey a message. As such, it reflects a deep and comfortable knowledge of a world of stories and scholarship, which could be mined at will to make just the right point, whatever that may have been. The casket embodies connectedness, made in what many might consider to be an unexpected place and time. Aptly, its most prominent inscription on the front panel dedicates the casket not to a king or an archbishop, or even to God, but to the whale from whose bone it was carved, a whale that, until beached on the Northumbrian shore, swam the seas that linked these islands to the rest of the world. The Franks Casket simply is a wonderful thing to behold, and if you haven't seen it, I'd advise you to do so. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe. And you can also support the channel on Subscribestar via the link in the description or via YouTube Super Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.